An Orioles weekend that started with so much promise ends with almost a no-hitter, a collapse in the eighth inning, and Adley Rutschman on the injured list. We'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, June 23rd, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles series loss to the New York Yankees in the Bronx this weekend as the O's won the opener on Friday night, a pretty magnificent win, honestly, and surprising win to get, but then they got blown out on Saturday, were almost no hit, and held the lead into the eighth inning on Sunday, but lost it there and lost the series in New York, and also lost Adley Rutschman to the injured list, lost a couple players as well. We will get to it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Now, if you are listening to today's show, or of course, if you are watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and subscribe to the show wherever you listen. You probably noticed if you're watching on YouTube, not the usual background behind me. On vacation for a few days this week, still wanted to get you a weekend recap pod, so you bring the gear along with you, and the background doesn't have nearly as much Orioles gear, but hopefully we're at least sounding, looking somewhat the same for this weekend recap episode. So let's begin with the good stuff from this weekend for the Orioles. The one win they came out of here with in New York, and that was on Friday. And we start with the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' 5-3 win over the Yankees on Friday night to open up this series. And the first thing you need to know is the Orioles once again got to a tough lefty, not destroying Max Fried, but did well enough to win. And the Orioles this year were 4-15 in their first 19 games in which they were facing off against a left-handed starting pitcher. They had been a historically bad offense against lefties. Before last weekend against the Angels, the Orioles had the worst ever OPS as a team against left-handed pitching, but they started to pick it up. The Angels last weekend pitched 2 lefties, Tyler Anderson on Saturday and Yusei Kikuchi on Sunday. And the O's hit well against both and won both games on their way to that sweep of the Halos. And in this series, the O's had a chance to get to a much better lefty in Max Fried, guy who signed the 8-year, $218 million contract with the Yankees this offseason, came into the start with a sub-2 ERA, and the Orioles jumped on him and won a game against a lefty, making it 3 in a row for the Orioles. The O's got on Fried for 3 runs over 6 innings on 7 hits in this one. And for Max Fried, it was just the second time this season he had allowed 3 or more earned runs in a start. The other one was May 30th in LA against the Dodgers when he allowed 6 runs. The only non-Dodgers team to get 3 runs off Max Fried this year is the Orioles. You actually have to go back to September 11th of last year for the last time he allowed 3 earned runs to any team that was not named the Los Angeles Dodgers. And Fried also hit 2 batters, only the 5th time in his career he's done that. The Orioles had him kind of out of sorts. And the second thing you need to know from Friday's win is that the runs off Max Fried came from some somewhat unlikely sources. And the Orioles, they got right on Fried in this game. Ended up loading the bases with 2 outs in the top of the first inning. And Gary Sanchez came through, lining a 2-run single into left field to put the Orioles up 2-0. Gary, who went 2 for 3 with a walk in this one. And then it was a big day for Coby Mayo as well. You fast forward to the 6th inning, Orioles trailing 3-2. You've got singles from Colton Cowser and Gary Sanchez with 1 out. And Coby Mayo comes up big. He gets behind 0-2, but then he gets to a breaking ball, gets the bat on it, and just kind of bloops it into left center field, falls in for an RBI single to tie the game at 3. Mayo with a 2-hit game also had a double down the line earlier in this one as well. Just the second career 2-hit game at the big league level for Coby Mayo, who also last weekend against the Angels had a game with a single and a double. He's just starting to look more and more comfortable at the plate. And that's obviously a good sign for the O's. They're still going to be without Ryan Mountcastle for a while, and Mayo is kind of playing that role. And it was all part of a day in which the Orioles went 4 for 11 as a team with runners in scoring position. And with how bad they've been in those scenarios so far this season, you're going to take 4 for 11. You will absolutely take that. I mean, in the 8th inning, Gunnar did it again. Remember, he wasn't doing this all year. And then all of a sudden, for the last 2 weeks, he just continues to get hits with runners in scoring position against left-handed pitchers. He had another one that extended the Oriole lead to 5-3 late in the game. Just all really positive stuff from this Oriole offense. But the third thing you need to know is it was Raone Aras who ended up delivering the winning blow in this one. Aras kind of came into this game a little cold. He was like a 1 for 17 stretch, but he used that Mickey Mouse short porch to his advantage in the 8th inning. A 337-foot solo home run to lead off the 8th that just snuck over the wall in right field to break the tie and put the Orioles up 4-3. And it was against Luke Weaver. It was the first batter Weaver had faced coming off the IL. He'd been on the injured list since June 3rd with a hamstring issue, was activated on Friday, entered in a 3-3 game in the 8th inning. First inning, Raone Aras says, "Welcome back," with the home run. And for Arias, his 5th homer of the season. He hit 11 last year, so he's about on pace to hit 11 more. But he has saved his home runs for the big spots. 4 of his 5 home runs this season have now given the Orioles the lead. And the chances for Arias, who's having another solid year, are going to continue because we know Jordan Westburg missed a good amount of time with that hamstring, and now he's got another thing bothering him. Westburg sliding into second base on Saturday, jammed his finger and came out of the game. Luckily, the x-rays were negative. The Orioles are hoping Westburg is probably going to avoid an injured list trip, just kind of be out a couple of days and then be back. But with him out, that means you're going to place Raone Aras at third base every single day. And hopefully he continues to make the most of his opportunities. Fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles' Friday win over the Yankees is that Tomoyuki Sugano once again really struggled. And honestly, mechanically, he just does not look right now. Sugano lasted just 3 2/3 innings, making it his shortest start of his big league career. 3 2/3, 3 runs on 7 hits, 4 strikeouts, 3 walks, and a home run allowed on 89 pitches for Sugano. Now, the Yankees only had 5 hard hit balls against him. It's not like they were cranking the ball around the yard against Sugano, but the 3 walks was a season high and a big league career high. He just did not have good command, and especially on that 4-seam fastball. He threw it 22 times, and it was just barely his most used pitch, but only had a 41% in-zone rate on that 4-seam fastball on Friday. That is, especially for a 4-seamer, that is terrible if you're going to use it as your number 1 fastball. I mean, he started the game by walking the leadoff batter again. He loaded the bases with nobody out. He was honestly lucky to escape the first inning, only allowing 2 runs to that Yankee offense as they tied the game at 2 in the bottom of the first. And he was able to settle in maybe a little bit in the second and third innings, but he gave up a home run to Aaron Judge. Pretty much everyone does that. Luckily, it was just a solo shot, but he really wasn't using his splitter much. Only 11 of his 89 pitches were his number 1 weapon, that splitter. And what made it so surprising is one of Sugano's best starts of the year was against this Yankees team. It was in Baltimore back on April 28th in a game the Orioles won. Sugano went 5 scoreless innings with 8 strikeouts against the Yankees. In that game, his splitter was dancing. He had 9 whiffs on 12 swings against Yankee hitters on that splitter in that start back in April. To just get 1 whiff on 5 swings, maybe he didn't have a feel for it. The command also wasn't great on that pitch. Just does not look like the same Sugano. And I've talked about this, and I think a lot of people figure that, hey, Sugano, even with the great start he had to his first big league season after the Orioles signed him this offseason, you figured he'd go through a rough patch at some point. Even though he's a very decorated pitcher in Japan, he's a veteran, he's 35 years old, he's never pitched in Major League Baseball. There was going to be a rough stretch, and it kind of feels like we're in the middle of that right now here in June. And we probably thought, hey, the weather warms up. Sugano doesn't have elite stuff. He doesn't have swing and miss stuff. He pitches to contact. And you figure, hey, all that contact with the weather warming up is going to turn into maybe some harder contact, too many extra base hits, too many homers, and he's going to have a stretch of bad starts. And then you hope that he kind of turns it back the other way and adjusts there. So it's not surprising he's had a few rough starts here, but this is not how I saw the struggle going. And I can't imagine anyone else thought that, hey, when Sugano struggles, that this is how it would look. It's not that he's getting crushed around the yard because he's throwing too many strikes and there's too many balls in play. It's that he's kind of lost his elite command that made him so good in Japan and made him so good early in the season when he came to the States. And that's why I think it's something mechanical. I really hope it's not any kind of injury issue that Sugano is going through. We know we've been through enough of that with the Orioles starting pitchers this year, but something mechanically just feels like it needs to be tweaked. I mean, Sugano did allude to it and say it a little bit when he talked to the media after the game, that he basically said, like, yeah, I know what's going on and I know how to fix it. So hopefully in his next start, when we see him pitch, we'll see what game he would pitch. I guess he would probably throw Wednesday night against the Rangers. So we'll see if he did know what was going on and he can adjust it. But I hope that's the case, because it doesn't look right. His last 3 starts, he has not even completed 5 innings in any of his last 3 starts. 12 2/3 innings, 21 hits, 9 earned runs, 10 Ks to 6 walks and 2 homers, a 6.39 ERA for Sugano in the last 3 starts. And here's the thing, right? He's not getting destroyed. Before these last 3 starts, when Sugano had an ERA around 3, he allowed an 8% barrel rate and a 39% hard hit rate. Those numbers are fairly close to league average, not too bad. Let me rephrase that. That is the barrel rate and the hard hit rate in the last 3 starts when he's been struggling. Not too bad. Before that, this season, 10% barrel rate, 36% hard hit rate. So yeah, it's adjusted a little bit, but it's the quality of contact has been pretty much the same for opposing hitters. Not much has changed there. The strikeout rate is basically the same. The issue is the walk rate has almost tripled in the last 3 starts. It's a command thing. I never thought I would have to say this season Sugano's struggling because of command issues, because that's his whole thing is command. But that's where we're at. So hopefully it's true when he says he knows what's going wrong. He can fix it. He'll get back to the awesome starts he was giving the Orioles earlier in the year. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 5-3 win over the Yankees on Friday night to open up this series is that the bullpen came in after Sugano couldn't even complete 4 innings and absolutely saved the day. Keegan Akin entered the game with 2 on and 2 out in the 4th inning with the O's trailing 3-2 and gave up a single. But Ramon Laureano, another just incredible throw to the plate to get the out at home to end the inning and keep it 3-2. I could not believe how quick he transferred the ball on one hop from his glove to his throwing hand and just fired it on a hop to the plate. It was an incredible defensive play. Another team-leading assist from the outfield for Laureano to keep it 3-2, and then Akin came back out for the 5th and threw up a 0. That was nice to see him do that. Yennier, it wasn't a clean inning, but he did put up a 0 in the 6th for a big bounce-back outing, of course, after he had given up 4 earned runs in Tampa on Wednesday. And the guy who saved the day may have been Scott Blewett. The Orioles bullpen was not in a great place, and it's a 3-3 game going into the bottom of the 7th at Yankee Stadium. Doesn't get more high leverage than that. And the Orioles go to their long man, Scott Blewett, a waiver claim, to come into that spot. And all he does is go 6 up, 6 down, mowing through the Yankee order in both the 7th and 8th innings. In by far his highest leverage spot of the year, really his only high leverage spot he's gotten this year. And he acted like it was nothing to get to that point, gave the Orioles a chance to score 2 in the 8th, take the lead, and then Felix Bautista comes on in the 9th, and I think he had his best fastball command of the season on Friday night. 14 of his 17 pitches were that fastball, punched out Aaron Judge at 100 miles an hour, and got the save to get the Orioles the W. I mean, obviously coming off what happened in Tampa on Wednesday to rebound and win that series finale, and then get 3 2/3 from Sugano and find a way to win this game Friday night in Yankee Stadium. That was back-to-back just mega impressive wins by the Orioles. But the question became, okay, can they keep it up in this tough series, the Bronx? And on Saturday, they certainly did not keep it up. They almost made history in a bad way in Saturday's game. We'll talk about what went wrong in that one coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller, longer. Now, for me, I love the classic variety. Cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch. The in-shell options are a classic favorite, but they also have the no-shells variety, and they are really the perfect grab-and-go snack with so many different flavors, taking them around on those busy days. So get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So after the Orioles got a really, really impressive win on Friday night, they had a chance to go out there on Saturday in the afternoon and clinch a series win. And they did not do that, falling 9-0 to the Yankees in Game 2 as New York even this series. And usually when the Orioles lose games like this on the weekends, I'll do a what went right, what went wrong, and a shout out to for this game. For this game, it's all three of them. All three parts of the game recap are going to be what went wrong. So let's start with what went wrong, number one from Saturday. That was Zack Efflin was really bad again. The command once again escaped him, walked two batters in Saturday's game, which tied a season high. I mean, 2 walks doesn't sound like a lot, and it isn't for most pitchers, but for Zack Efflin, that is a crazy high number, and he was just terrible. 3 innings for Efflin in this game, 6 runs on 10 hits allowed, 4 Ks, 2 walks, and 3 home runs he allowed as well on 90 pitches. His ERA has ballooned to 5.46 on the season. How about that from a guy we really trust in this rotation in Zack Efflin? Just the 3rd time this year he's walked multiple batters in a start, and the long ball obviously got to him with the 3 homers. Now, luckily, all 3 were solo home runs, and sometimes you can do that and still not get hurt too bad. It was the 2nd time this season he had allowed at least 3 homers, and just the 3rd time he's done it since 2021. But he allowed the solo homers early, and it was really that 3-run 3rd inning that just got away from him. There was that little duck snort RBI 2-run single loop down the right field line that kind of broke the game opener for the Yankees, and 6 earned runs allowed is obviously bad in any start, but what was much worse is that he only got 9 outs, that he threw 90 pitches and he only got through 3 innings. As Mr. Efficiency, pitching deeper into games than any other Oriole starter, Zack Efflin gave you 3 innings. And the fact that that came after you got only 3 2/3 from Sugano on Friday, and you got only 2 1/3 from Trevor Rogers on Wednesday, put the Orioles bullpen and the pitching staff in general just in a really, really bad spot. Not to mention that they were down 6-0 that early, and it felt like early in the season when all their starts were terrible. And Efflin, of course, had those really good 3 starts early in the year. Then he goes on the IL with the lat issue. And since coming back in early May from that lat issue, his game log is just all over the place. I'm just going to read out the 8 starts Zack Efflin has made since coming off the injury list with the lat issue. 5 innings, 2 runs. 5 1/3 innings, 8 runs. 5 innings, 4 runs. 7 innings, no runs. 6 innings, 3 runs. 6 2/3 innings, 1 run. 5 innings, 7 runs. 3 innings, 6 runs. That is a 5.63 ERA and a 5.50 FIP in that stretch. So he's been incredible and he's been terrible. Like, what in the world is going on with Zack Efflin? The command is worst. I would say that's number 1 on the list of what's going wrong, but I still need to see more to figure out, like, is the lat lingering? Is that leading to all of this? There was a story from Andy Kuska in the Baltimore Banner that talked to Efflin about how he had kind of, in that first bad stretch coming off the IL, he had identified what was going on, and that's when he came out there and threw those 3 straight, 6+ innings, couple of run starts that were great. So it was like, okay, he found what's going wrong, he fixed it, he's all good. And then these last 2 starts, 8 innings, 13 earned runs. Like, what in the world is going on with this guy? I don't know. The O's are going to need him to be his usual Zack Efflin self, and he just doesn't look like that right now. So I'm intrigued to see what it looks like in his next start against the Rays next weekend, because I'm a little bit concerned about Zack Efflin at the moment. The second what went wrong is that the Orioles almost got no hit in this game. They finished with just 1 single hit in this one. Clark Schmidt almost threw a no-hitter for the Yankees. He did throw 7 no-hit innings, but Aaron Boone pulled him at 103 pitches, 7 scoreless, hitless innings, with the Yankees leading, I believe it was 8-0 at that point. They did end up pulling Schmidt out of the game. And it's not like he dominated in terms of swings and misses. He had only 8 whiffs on 50 swings against Orioles hitters. That's a 16% whiff rate. That's not great at all. I mean, Zack Efflin in 3 innings had more swings and misses with 10 of them than Schmidt had in 7 no-hit innings with 8 of them. So it wasn't like, oh, this dominant stuff, nobody can touch him, this is incredible. There was a lot of good luck involved in 7 hitless innings, but the Orioles also just kind of did nothing against him. Like, Gunnar Henderson and Raone Aras each had a couple of hard hit balls, but other than that, that was about it. And Aaron Boone pulls him right at 103 pitches, 7 no-hit innings in a blowout game, and you could tell the Yankees clearly did not care about this no-hitter because they treated it like a normal 9-0 lead. They went to JT Brubaker, their long man out of the bullpen, who just was added to the roster for his first MLB appearance of the year. And Gary Sanchez hits a leadoff single off Brubaker in the top of the 8th to end the no-hitter. Ended up being the Orioles' only hit. They were still shut out in the 9-0 loss. It was a really, really bad offensive performance in this game. But hey, at least you don't go down in history. It's not a no-hitter. And I guess you just try to move on. But there was a third thing that went wrong from Saturday, and that is that Adley Rutschman is now on the injured list. Let's go back to Friday when Tony Mansolino initially had Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holliday, Ryan O'Hearn all on the bench in Friday's lineup, but to get him an off day against the left-hander Max Fried. But then about 30 minutes before first pitch, the O's made a lineup change. Jackson Holliday came back in as the DH, and Adley Rutschman, who was supposed to be the designated hitter in this one, was scratched. And it was a good night for Jackson. He went 3 for 5 with a run scored on Friday. But we found out it's because Adley was a late scratch with a side issue that flared up during batting practice before the game on Friday. He underwent an MRI on Saturday morning, and evidently there was some bad news in that MRI. So before Saturday's game, the Orioles placed Adley Rutschman on the 10-day injured list with a left oblique strain. Now, this is technically the first trip to the IL in Adley's big league career. Now, he did debut late in 2022. Part of the reason he didn't come up till May of that year is he missed the first month with a tricep issue, but technically he was on the minor league injured list because he hadn't debuted yet. So that's why technically he's never been on the big league IL. And of course, last year he had that finger thing after the foul tip and took that foul ball off his mask earlier this year when he missed a couple of games. So it's not like it's been a completely clean bill of health for Adley, but it's kind of a significant thing. Your first injured list trip. The Orioles have never really had to deal with Adley just not being able to be on the field for a long stretch. And even a mild oblique strain, it can keep guys out for at least a month. And then Tony Mansolino, before Sunday's game, said that Adley will be out until at least after the All-Star break. And that All-Star break is June or July, like 14th to the 17th-ish. So you're talking, again, at least about a month that Adley is going to be out. And if it is more serious, now Mansolino has said the MRA showed a kind of mild oblique issue, and that's at least some positive news for Adley. But if it is any more severe or he aggravates it or anything, it can be multiple months. These oblique injuries are very tough to deal with. It's all of that swinging motion as a hitter. It is really hard to come back as a hitter with an oblique issue, and you got to be really, really careful with these injuries because if you tweak it again, you re-injure it, it's just longer and longer and longer. You got to sit out. So again, not having Adley until after the All-Star break is not good for this team. I understand he had his struggles earlier this year. I understand he had his struggles in the second half. But of course, this could not come at a worse time. The Orioles are playing better, and that is because Adley was playing better. In the month of June, Adley Rutschman had basically been the Orioles' best hitter. 309 batting average, 381 on base, 509 slugging, 11% walk rate to a minuscule 12% strikeout rate. Adley had a 153 WRC plus in the month of June. That is the Adley Rutschman we know and love, right? It was just an 84 WRC plus on the season entering June, and he got red hot, and now, of course, he is injured. So the Orioles recalled Maverick Handley to take his roster spot and be the backup catcher who, was 3 for 40 with 17 strikeouts in 15 games earlier this year. So Gary Sanchez is going to be your main catcher with hopefully Handley as the backup. And Gary was hitting, over 400 since coming off the IL. So he's been swinging the bat well. Then Maverick Handley got into a collision on Sunday. So we'll see if he has to hit the IL. We might see Chadwick Tromp come up and be the backup if Maverick has any issues here. And of course, we're going to get the question, okay, why not Samuel Basallo? Your top prospect is a catcher. He's in AAA. He's got a 151 WRC plus. He's lighting the world on fire. Tony Mansolino said it. It's not going to be Basallo yet. And this is why. He has caught only 16 games behind the plate in AAA. Why? Because he's been dealing with hamstring and elbow issues all season, and the O's are trying to kind of ease him back in. His catching is already behind his offense. As a prospect, they want to make sure he's ready to go as a catcher before giving him that workload. I think Basallo is going to come up at some point in 2025. It is not the time. This is why you brought in Gary Sanchez. He can be the starter. And whether it's Handley or if he's injured, Chadwick Tromp, they'll be okay-ish. Just as this team goes, Adley goes, or really as Adley goes, this team goes. And it's not that he's just struggling. If he literally can't be on the field, this is something we've really never seen for a long stretch. I do worry about the Orioles' ability to stay competitive with him on the IL for the first time. But the Orioles did lose that game. They lose Adley, but had a chance. They did have a chance. They had a lead in the 8th inning on Sunday to try and win a series at Yankee Stadium. Unfortunately, the bullpen couldn't hold on just long enough as the O's dropped the series. I'll break down what happened to finish off the show coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. It's an easy-to-use app, it's fast to pay out, and makes regular season games feel like must-watch events. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So we finished things up looking at Sunday's game. The O's had a chance. They had the lead in the eighth. They couldn't pull it in as the Orioles lose 4-2 on Sunday. They drop 2 out of 3 in this series in the Bronx. They go 3-4 on this 7-game AL East road trip against the Rays and the Yankees. And the Orioles come back home tonight with a 33-44 record on the season. So let's start with what went right from Sunday's loss to the Yankees. And that is the Orioles did jump on Will Warren pretty early. Warren, who was the Yankee starter in this one, first pitch of the game, Jackson Holliday lines a base hit the other way. Second pitch of the game, Warren hits Raone Aras on the shoulder, and the Orioles immediately have first and second with nobody out. And then before the next pitch, Jackson Holliday gets picked off at second base by Will Warren, which was not some good base running. If that doesn't happen to Jackson, the Orioles could have really rallied in this inning, and they still kind of did, because it was followed by a Gunnar walk. Then a Ryan O'Hearn RBI single made it 1-0. And later in the inning with 2 outs, Colton Cowser delivers an RBI double to put the Orioles up 2-0. And for the second time in 3 games this series, the O's take a 2-0 lead in the top of the first before the Yankees even get a chance to hit. And getting 2 hits with a runner in scoring position in 1 inning, that is a great sign for this Orioles team that quietly is hitting much better in those spots. We know on the year, they still have a .223 batting average with runners in scoring position. That was entering play Sunday. That's 26th in Major League Baseball. But in the month of June coming into Sunday, the Orioles were hitting .276 with runners in scoring position. That's 5th in the league. A 132 WRC plus is 4th in the league. They've kind of, for now, fixed that problem. But specifically in the first inning, they had been horrible. On the year, the Orioles were hitting just 169 in the first inning with runners in scoring position. So to get 2 hits in that spot was great. Also, Will Warren has a 3.6 ERA in the first inning, much lower than his regular ERA, which is pushing 5. So he's been good early in games as well. Just things coming together for the Orioles to put on a lead and put themselves in a good spot in this one. What went wrong is that, well, they didn't score again, and they just weren't able to hold that 2-1 lead the entire time. They really, after the first inning, ended up with 2 more good chances to score. The first one was in the 7th when Dylan Carlson led off the inning with a double, and then the Orioles went strikeout, flyout, ground out, and did not score a 3rd run. And then the other big one was in the 8th. Gunnar Henderson and Ryan O'Hearn both walked back-to-back against the lefty Tim Hill to start the inning. The Yankees then went to the bullpen to the right-hander Fernando Cruz, who has the ridiculous splitter and has the highest strikeout rate of any qualified reliever in Major League Baseball this year. And you saw why, as Cruz came in and struck out 3 consecutive Orioles to keep Gunnar and O'Hearn right where they are and keep it at a 2-1 game. And they held that 2-1 lead for as long as they possibly could have. You know, Aiken and Dominguez got them to the 8th. I mean, Sir Anthony Dominguez with a huge strikeout of Aaron Judge with runners on the corners and 2 down in the 7th to keep the O's up 2-1. It was a 3-2 splitter that caught a lot of the plate, but Judge did not expect it and was way early, swung through it for strike 3. And the Orioles go to Brian Baker, leading 2-1 in the 8th. Baker, who has been their best reliever this season. In his last 11 outings, he allowed just 1 run, 9 2/3, 5 hits, 1 run, 12 Ks, and 1 walk in his last 11 appearances. Again, has been dynamite. Easy decision to go to him. He's been getting lefties out better than righties, and there were a few lefties due up in the 8th for the Yankees. And unfortunately for Baker, it became just his 3rd outing of the season in which he allowed more than 1 earned run. His command was one of the worst command outings I've seen in 2025 from Baker. And it wasn't that he was super overworked. I wouldn't say that, because Baker hadn't pitched in this series. The game on Sunday, he hadn't pitched since Thursday, so he was better rested than most of the Orioles relievers. So it really wasn't that. It was just he just didn't have it. Some days a reliever comes in, they're so volatile, they just don't have it, and that's really what happened to Baker on Sunday. Now, the defense certainly didn't help him in the 8th inning. On the Jazz Chisholm 2-run triple that put the Yankees up 3-2, where he swung 3-0. if you get a little better relay throw from Gunnar to the plate, it probably cuts down Goldschmidt at the plate and at least keeps it tied. The throw's just a little up the line. Gary Sanchez didn't have enough time to catch it and get the tag back down. And then on the next play, like the Orioles had an easy out at the plate, and Gary Sanchez just drops the ball. Should have been a tag out of Jazz at the plate to keep it 3-2. Instead, it goes down an error as an unearned run, and it was a huge insurance run to make it 4-2 Yankees. And again, Baker did not pitch well. He didn't even finish the inning. He had to come out, and Soto came in and got a strikeout with 2 on and 2 out to keep it at 4-2. But Baker just was not good, but his defense kind of let him down as well. And that was unfortunate. But again, you got to think about Orioles could have scored more than 2 runs at some point in this game, and they just did not do it. And the shout out for Sunday goes to Dean Kremer. I really like the way he looked out there. And honestly, Dean Kremer, he's been really, really good lately. We talked about, how awful Kremer was in April, and that's a career-wide thing. He's always terrible in the first month of the season, and then he starts to turn it on, and he is doing the same thing this year. The last 6 outings for Dean Kremer, 34 and a third innings, 32 Ks, 9 walks. He's got a 3.15 ERA over his last 6 outings. And again, on Sunday, he relied on the splitter, 6 whiffs on 12 swings. It was really good again. That is his best pitch. That is his strikeout pitch. He is trusting it right now, and it is working out. And his fastball command was pristine. 65% zone rate on the 4-seamer, 67% on the sinker. They had good velocity. His strikeout of Giancarlo Stanton, that was the final batter he faced before Tony Mansolino removed him from the game and went to Keegan Aiken. Kremer's final line was 5 2/3, 1 run, 5 hits, 7 Ks, and 1 walk on 85 pitches, just 5 hard hit balls by the Yankees. And Kremer, who had like an 8+ ERA at one point, has lowered it to 4.60 now on the season. And that at bat to Stanton was just like good morning, good afternoon, and good night with just fastballs. And again, I love the Kremer splitter, but that's how good his fastball was on Sunday. If you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, you'll see this chart from that at bat from Baseball Savant and StatCast. He goes 4-seamer down and away, strike, sinker down and away, strike 2, and then 4-seamer up at the top of the zone, gets Stanton to swing through it for strike 3 with a couple runners on base. It was a huge K. Kremer was in a tough spot in that 6th inning, right? He walked Judge, and then he allowed a double. The Yankees had 2nd and 3rd, no outs, trying to hold the 2-1 lead. He gets a shallow fly out where Judge doesn't tag for the first out. He strikes out Stanton, and then they get Keegan Aiken in there, who gets a fly out to end the inning and keeps the O's up 2-1. Some big strikeouts, a lot with the fastball from Kremer on Sunday. Really like that. And even though 5 2/3 innings isn't the longest start in the world, they needed length big time. And that's considered length, particularly when you get the starts of 2 1/3, 3 2/3, and 3 innings in 3 of your last 4 games. I mean, the Orioles bullpen had to cover 5 2/3 on Wednesday, 5 1/3 on Friday, and then 5 innings on Saturday. Another short start on Sunday, and they may not have been to cover this game at all. Now, obviously, they ended up losing either way, but Dean Kremer going 5 2/3 gave them a chance to try and hold on and win this game, even though the offense only got them 2 runs. But because of those short starts before, the Orioles and they didn't end up using the fresh arm, but they clearly needed a fresh arm in that bullpen going into Sunday. They just, if Kremer didn't pitch into the 6th, they would have run out of relievers to use in this game. And, they could have DFA'd Scott Blewett. He had pitched Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. He was not available Sunday, but I don't think they want to lose him on waivers again. With how good he was this weekend, I think they really want to hold on to Blewett. They could have optioned Keegan Aiken, but he was available Sunday, and they don't want to go down to just one left-handed pitcher remaining in the bullpen. And so the Orioles made a somewhat surprising move. They optioned Yennier to AAA before Sunday's game. Right-hander Yarmil Geraldo was called up to be the fresh arm in the bullpen. Geraldo came up for 1 big league outing in May, was optioned back down on May 28th. And since then in AAA, 16 strikeouts to 2 walks and 3 runs allowed in 7 2/3 innings. He's been ridiculous with his stuff down there. But, the Orioles have a bullpen where just Yennier Cano, Keegan Aiken, and Felix Bautista at that point are the only relievers with minor league options. And that was the issue with this bullpen I talked about coming into the season. I mentioned how talented the bullpen was, and they've been great, but they weren't very flexible in terms of being able to option guys when you really need to in a modern bullpen. And Cano had pitched Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, so he certainly wasn't going to be available to pitch Sunday, and maybe wouldn't have even been available to pitch Monday as well. And he hasn't really been great lately. In his last 20 appearances, that's since May 4th, 16 innings, a 7.88 ERA with a 5.06 FIP, and his ground ball rate, which had been as high as 63% 2 years ago was at 44% in that stretch. Now, his xFIP, which shows you like how good a pitcher should be ERA wise, if you take into account a lot of things that have to do with luck, is 2.85. His strikeout rate is up this year. His walk rate is down. The peripherals are saying he should be better, but his ground ball rate is down 10% from last year. More balls in the air tends to hurt Yennier Cano. And so I think it was a little bit of, hey, Cano struggled lately, let's get him a reset in AAA, but it was more of just a victim of the circumstance, right? The Orioles needed a fresh arm. They didn't have many guys with options. They looked around, they said, Cano, you're not available. You've struggled a little bit lately. You're going to be our guy. And as long as Cano buys into it and knows that, listen, like he has to stay down in AAA for 15 days before he can come back up unless someone goes on the injured list and he replaces them. So if anybody hits the IL, Cano is going to be back. Like, for example, if Maverick Handley, who left the game Sunday, hits the IL, the O's will do some maneuvering. They might get Cano back on Monday or Tuesday to rejoin the bullpen. But the issue here is if he doesn't buy in. If he buys in and says, I get it, I understand it, I'll take the reset, I'm going to do my best, I'm going to come back in 2 weeks and I'll be fine, he's going to be good. He is still a valuable, good reliever to this Orioles team. If this upsets him a little bit, if he doesn't fully buy in, there could be an issue moving forward here with Yennier Cano. Hopefully he does and he understands the situation. It's just an unfortunate part of the roster. And of course he was having his own struggles that certainly didn't help his cause when it came to this moment. But the O's needed some longer starts. They weren't getting him. The bullpen was in a bad spot. I wouldn't be surprised though if Cano is back up today. If indeed Maverick Handley has to go on the IL, they could do some maneuvering to get Cano right back up here in that bullpen, but was not enough for the Orioles on Sunday. They lose 4-2, and they drop 2 out of 3 in the series to the Yankees. But they are back in action here on Monday night, trying to get back to their winning ways and back at home. It's a 6:35 game on Masson against the Texas Rangers. They've had a very middling season so far. They come in at 38-40. Patrick Corbin, remember him from the Nationals? Yeah, he's 35, pitching on a 1-year, $1 million deal with the Rangers. Hasn't been terrible. He's got a 3.91 ERA in 13 starts. A left-hander. He takes the hill. See if the O's can beat 4 straight lefties. And he'll go up against Trevor Rogers, who wasn't so great in his return start in Tampa last week, but hopefully it'll be better tonight. It's a 6:35 start. And then my plan is to have an episode at some point for you on Tuesday morning, recapping Monday's game and getting any further info on the likes of Maverick Handley, Adley Rutschman, Jordan Westburg, and Yennier Cano. But that's coming up on the Tuesday episode. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.